Hi there, I'm Jupiter Darkling and I'm here with Chrysus Darkling, and this is our second episode talking about mental health for artists. In this episode, we are discussing our personal mental health struggles and how we deal with them and how they relate to our art. So, for me, I have a form of autism, I live with PTSD, I have generalized anxiety disorder, and reoccurring depressive disorder, mild to severe. And it was quite a struggle living with those things. In everyday life, it is really hard to adjust to what society wants you to be. And for these reasons, I cannot work a regular job. Luckily, I did find a temporary job for only 4 hours a week, where I can socialize with people and do something that isn't too physically demanding, because I also have physical health issues, not just mental health issues. And they are very understanding, so for the time being, it is doable. Especially looking back when, in 2022, when I met my fiancé, life was not what it is now. It was really dark for me. I thought there was no way out, and I was ready to give up on everything and ready to end my life. And 2 years later, almost 3 years later, here we are. Things are going a lot better. I'm on medication for my depression right now, and that took away my depression, but my fiancé gave me happiness. And how this relates to my artwork? Well, it makes you feel like creating is a form of escapism, but also a form of self-expression, certain things that you cannot find in everyday life. And even though I draw people that really exist, and very rarely people that don't exist, it is a beautiful way of finding and creating something that just makes you feel alive, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and as for me, I've not had the confidence to have tests done, but with a lot of research and how I work in my mind and I know the struggles I've got, and alright, it could be something else, but I've got undiagnosed ADHD and the struggles I've got, and if it's not ADHD, obviously that's where a professional would know. But as far as I know, I've got them symptoms and I struggle with it. And it's down to confidence, why I don't want to be one of them self-diagnosed people, I guess when people have not had it diagnosed, people have the reasons, and hopefully soon I'll hope to get it diagnosed. And I know, like, with my artwork, again, ADHD abandoned projects, and, you get hyper-focused on things, and then you suffer with a burnout, and the burnout goes totally against everything of being an artist as well, because you want to finish pieces, and you want to finish your artwork. I love working in not just single pieces. I love creating a body of work, through creating 20 artworks so you can exhibit it. But the trouble with that is you start out and you can do a first couple of pieces, great, you've got the motivation. Then you start getting burnt out, and then you've got God knows how many more pieces to finish. So I can do 5 pieces and great, and then I've got 15 pieces to finish. Now I'm burnt out, what do I do? And then you get into this slump, you get unmotivated again. Then you feel guilty because it's like, this is my job. I have nothing else to do. And I'm a full-time artist. And then imposter syndrome kicks in and you start feeling like a fraud. And you are. And I hear this from a lot of artists, that the fraud police, the art police are going to come and arrest you. And it's all in your head. And it's an hard thing to break once you've got stuck into that rut. And there's no way out of it. And it's the same as like writer's block, art block. That them things kick in again. And although I found art is pretty easy, once you get burnt out, there's no way out. Then you've got to find a way to motivate yourself again. On top of that, society as an artist, like, I've always felt where I'm from in Britain, they look down on you. And you got a lot of people where they've got a normal 9 to 5 job, and you hear comments like, "Oh, what do you do?" And you say you're an artist, and it's like that attitude, like, "Oh, must be nice." And some people literally have said that, "Must be nice." You paint pictures for a living, and if it's that easy, why ain't everyone doing that? It is hard. You can't. It is a job in that way, and yeah, you enjoy it, and it's an hobby. But the burnout, the thing is, with creativity, you can spend a day doing art, and you're exhausted mentally, and physically as well, because sometimes, like, especially with physical work, your arm can be aching. Sometimes a big piece that I've been working on, you squat and you find your body's in different postures, and because you're hyper focused, you're not realising like what pressures you're putting on your body. Next day you wake up, your legs are aching, and you remember you've been working on a massive piece and that's why. But I found that, when you do favours for somebody and you put a piece of furniture up, and I remember once I was putting this furniture up, 8 hours it took to put this up, and it was physically demanding, and I suppose that is like the equivalent of like somebody who does things in a job who builds furniture and put furniture up. And although I was tired, there was just like what I call like this normal tired. I won't burn out. I could get up the next day and do it again. But then with art, I'm whacked. I just the next day you just burn out, and the creative juices have gone. And when you're tired with that, it's different from this physical tired. And I know people can get burnt out. I'm not saying that it's not the same for like normal work and stuff, but for me, there's a difference.
Yeah.
Now, somebody who isn't artistic can probably have burnout with a job and identify what I'm saying now. But maybe that's because people's brains are wired differently. But as an artist, people think it's this luxury life. You can just do what you want, lay on the sofa and sleep all day. And it's not like that.
No, it's because I remember what you said about things here in Britain are like different with being an artist, that you get those comments like, "Oh, must be nice." I experienced it very differently in the Netherlands. So I remember when we first met and we got close and we were like really close friends, I told my mom what you did for a living, and I said he's an artist. And instead of getting a comment of, "Oh, must be nice," or something like that, she immediately like, "Whoa, that's amazing." And everyone I've mentioned your craft to, everyone says that is incredible. And that's where I feel like, I'm Canadian born but Dutch raised, and living in the Netherlands is quite luxurious in that way when it comes to art, because there's so many art fairs, there's so many art exhibitions, and art is celebrated in my country a lot more than it is in Britain. And I feel, even though I've never participated in any art fairs or anything, I know people who have. I feel like chances there are a bit better to make it as an artist than it is in Britain. I could be wrong, but that's just something that I've personally seen, that people in Britain struggle a bit harder than Dutch artists that I've encountered. But that's all from personal experience. Again, I could be wrong, but this is just purely on my personal experience with people I've known. And so I do a small cleaning job, domestic cleaning job for the elderly and disabled. And there was this one man I cleaned for, and he has this friend who used to be an artist when she was younger, and she did a lot of exhibitions. And he has some of her artworks in his house, and it is amazing. It's seriously beautiful. And that's where I feel like you're so much closer to artists in the Netherlands than you are in Britain. The chances of meeting an artist in the Netherlands are more great than meeting one here in Britain, because it is more celebrated. It is more of a culture thing in the Netherlands. And as it comes to like mental health, I don't know how the system exactly works in Britain, but I know in the Netherlands, again, personal experience from people I've known, people I know who have struggled with mental health problems are usually the ones who are more artistic, because they need an escapism. So they make music, or they draw, or they write something to get lost in. Especially when they cannot access like the health system when it comes to mental health. And I think in a way it is a beautiful thing because escapism can be very useful, but it can also be very dangerous. And I'm kind of curious to find out what you think of that. So yeah, I just kind of want to know what you think of that, because personally I feel like escapism is a beautiful thing in a way of you can create your own world, but I think it's dangerous as well, as you can get lost in this world and lose touch with reality. And like I said, I'm curious to know what you think of that and how you view escapism in the way of art, whether it's a job or hobby.
Yeah, so as a job as well, it's that you get lost in that world, and when it's your job, art's classed as this, it's not a necessity. And I think that's why Britain view art as it is. It's almost like that. Every time you introduce yourself here, not long back I was in a taxi and he asked me what I did, and I said I'm an artist, and he was like, "Oh, how do you earn money?" And you get the same question over and over again. Whereas in Europe, you tell somebody and everyone's like, "Oh wow, that must be really like cool to do," and there's like this respect there straight away. And creating art is magic because people forget it's a form of intelligence, but because it's no value in life, there's no use for it. Again, there's no, yeah, but it don't feed you, it don't heat you up. What's the use? But there is, because it's that escapism, and yeah, it can be dangerous, I think, as an artist doing it, but people, what do after they come home from work?
They need it.
Straight away they'll listen to music, watch Netflix, it's all creativity that people get lost in.
Yeah.
And yet as a culture, we're all in on that. You know, we all escape in some way, no matter what we do. And again, somebody might, a teenager might come home from school, and the modern thing for them to do is go on YouTube. Their parents might come home from work, all their more traditional, might watch TV, you know, and this and that. But it's the same thing. They're watching somebody on YouTube being creative, doing their own thing, took action in life. The parents might come home, watch a soap, this and that, or watch Netflix. But again, whatever it is they're watching, somebody somewhere has planned. It's all creativity that they're watching. And I've always said this, if art isn't a necessity, what if there's so many strikes going on in the world lately, and strikes are associated with like work and key workers and things like that, things that, again, oh, you need us, so we're going to strike and you're all going to see the impact. Yeah. But I say the same with art. Like, what if every creative industry went on strike? What if you removed every artwork in the world, everything that's ever been produced? You know, you look at Friends, it's massive, it's nostalgic. Remove all that, everything that's ever been done, and you'll soon see the world we're living in. And then people, it'll hit them that, what is there after that? So art is a necessity, and not just art, I mean like creativity in that way. And strip the world of it, there's nothing left.
Yeah, exactly. Like, funny enough, I said this yesterday or the day before to you. Everything is art. The chair you're sitting on is made by a designer. The house you live in is made by an architect. Everything around you is an art form in one way or another. Everything is created by a designer and then built by someone who builds it. So in that way, if you would strip the world of art, you'd have literally nothing left, because everything is made by a designer of some sort. Yeah.
And again, like, a lot of, like, when bands and musicians, they'll go on tour. Now, I've always found it weird that it's never on the weekends, it's never a Friday, Saturday night. When people go on tour, they're always, they'll tour weeknights and stuff, but people got on the work next day. But when somebody's on a Wednesday night at work, they'll look forward to that gig that they're going to on the night.
Yeah.
And because it's not always on the weekend and this and that, so people just, they're a fan of a certain act in music, they'll go and see them. Mm-hmm. But it's escapism, again, it gets them out. Or if you don't go and see them, you can stream the album, this and that. No matter what it is, but take all that away. Now, that band is not a necessity. People, if that band was to say, you know, if somebody was to say to an up-and-coming band or something, they're serious, they want to make it out there, but they're not famous enough. Oh, what do you do for a living? And if they were to say, I'm a band, a singer in a band, oh yeah, well, they'll probably get the same question. Oh yeah, well, how do you make your money and this and that? And again, it's always that there's no necessity to it, but there is, because it's just finding your audience. That's all it is. There's something there for everybody.
Yeah.
To like, and it is, because that's the thing with human nature. We need entertainment, and we've got the skills to do art, but for some reason it's this forgotten craft that people have got.
Yeah.
And everyone is so obsessed with, people think intelligence is just, there's so many quiz shows on TV, and everyone's like always on about like that, like the Chase, for example, in Britain. Oh, they're so intelligent, and of course they are, but there's no reason to that. Nobody questions that.
Yeah.
Nobody was like, what use is that general knowledge? But they've made something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, people watching it is entertainment, but what's the point? But again, somebody somewhere's had this idea to create this game show for people to enjoy, relax, and people can participate. I can't say it.
Participate
in it, and they enjoy it, but that's what people do it. That's why they like quizzes, because people can shout at the TV and show off their own like pointless information, that knowledge that they've got. And it's the same with art. It's like it can be pointless, but there's a value in it. And when, just like a quiz, when somebody's shouting at the screen, but everyone in the rest of the room don't know the answer, people get a bit of a buzz out of it. It's they're expressing something. It's that pointless knowledge that they've got. And I suppose like the same with art. There's a release in everything that everybody does,
mm-hmm.
and it don't. Just because it's pointless, it doesn't mean that it's not got the value.
No, exactly.
But society's got that, and back to the mental health thing again. That if an artist wants to create that joy in the world, and create that art,
mm-hmm.
they're allowed to. There's no crime against it. And the thing with Britain, I always found there's this wall around London. Like, London is a different country. If you're outside, and especially in the north where I'm from, it's impossible. People are really just day-to-day mundane life.
Yeah.
And everyone's like so trapped in that. And like I said, they're trapped. And then what do they do in their own time? They do their own thing.
Yeah.
But what do they rely on? The creative industries.
Exactly. Yeah, and as for me personally, like when it comes to art and mental health, and I know that you experienced this as well, but in a different way, like the hyperfocus. Like when I create something, I need to finish that piece. It is very rare for me to stop working on a piece and create something new. For me, that's very rare, because I need to finish it. That's my hyperfocus. I'm working on the piece. I enjoy that piece. It needs to be finished before I can start something else.
Yeah.
But for you, I know it's a different type of hyperfocus. It's more like, correct me if I'm wrong, more like you want to create multiple pieces, and the multiple pieces is your hyperfocus. You want to get those done, but then you get burned out.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, usually I create like, when I do my semi-realism pieces, these portraits of people, I can create like a bunch of them, and then suddenly I'm burned out and I don't draw for God knows how long. But my pieces are finished because I only take on one at a time, usually. So that's for me a different hyperfocus and a different type of burnout than for you. And they're equally as bad because it gets you nowhere. But what I do like about being artistic and having your mental health struggles, and this is going to sound a bit weird, but when you struggle with certain mental health issues, you can create the things that you feel, the things that basically you can let the demons out, and you can express them in an artwork, and it can relieve you. It can be a form of self-expression. Like, I cannot talk to anyone about the things that I'm feeling, so what if I paint it? What if I draw it? What if I make a sculpture out of it? And then it's something, this intimate thing that you create that's only 100% understandable for you, and other people are left guessing, and that's beautiful. And what I also want to add to that, art brings people together. Like, I remember the good old days of DeviantArt, where I made some art friends, and you just talk about art, and then eventually you talk about your art, you talk about the things that are personal to you about your art, and that leads to deeper conversations, and eventually you have like a friend. And it's all virtual, but imagine that at like a Comic-Con or something, meeting a cosplayer who dressed as the same character as you, or from the same game, or from the same book, or whatever, and that just blows your mind, because then you feel an instant connection with them. So art can be very healing as well. Instead of just getting it out there, no, it can be very healing. It can be very connecting. It can bring you closer to another person. And that's actually very funny. We met on Instagram in 2022.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was doing doll makeup, and I posted it on my account. And he was researching doll makeup for a project he was working on, and he came across my photo. And then eventually he messaged me, I messaged back, and what did it for me personally is that I saw his name, he had the word artist in it, I saw his photo, I was like, okay, super cute. Looked at his artwork, and bam, there you had it. His artwork made me fall completely in love with what he was doing. And I don't know about a lot of people out there, but for me, there are only very few artists that absolutely wow me. There are like artists that I find good, but to absolutely wow me, that is rare. And that's exactly what his art did for me. It blew me away. And that's what I'm getting at, like when you struggle with mental health issues, finding an artist or an artwork that does something for you can be incredibly healing. It can soothe your soul.
Yeah, and a lot of people, as an artist, like I paint from the, I paint the work that I want to create and put out in the world, and that can be seen as like a selfish thing, because like a lot of artists like have to do commissions because it's people wanting a portrait of them themselves, so it can be pretty hard to sell your own artwork, and it's not that it's selfish. It's like that's like saying a director of a film is selfish.
Yeah.
People go. Nobody's going to go and watch a film about themselves because it's not about that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to art, it's like, it's impossible to sell your art because it's what an artist created. But it's not that. It's when you create art, of course it's personal work, but it's like, same with music. A lot of songs out there are love songs about a broken heart, and yet we relate to the lyrics. You put it, you hear them lyrics, you relate. And I think people have lost the way a lot in interpretation.
Yeah.
And as an artist, that's why I create the work. It's down to interpretation. So it's, as an artist, it's a way of helping other people with their mental health. It's that I've got my struggles and all, and they can view the work. But you create that artwork, and it's a transcendent world. You create this window.
Yeah.
For people to get lost in, and it's different as an artist because like it's not a film, it's not this, it's a still, and yeah, you can come out with a story, and I found that like how you met me, that there was an impact there, and when I started out, people, I found that I didn't advertise it, everything was growing organically and growing fast, and people would message me, and I used to put a little like rough story to the artwork so people got like a gist of what the artwork was about, and it touched people. Yeah. And straight away there was the connection. I've created this work, they interpret it to the point that much that it's impacted them, that much that they'll message and say how it's touched them. And that is a nice feeling because that's what the artwork is about. It's not literal like, oh, this is what it's about and it's about my life and you're all going to accept that. It's interpretation, and that's the only way I can put it. It's like a songwriter writing a song about a broken heart or this and that. People relate to it. Also, something I am finding is people getting a bit literal in their thinking, even down to music. Now when I hear a female singing, obviously like it'll be about a guy, but you can relate things to yourself in that way, and yet people are getting like literal on things now. That because, there's a guy singing. There'll be a female audience that don't relate, literally because of the lyrics. He's singing about a female, and they don't relate because it should be a male to them, the audience. And we're losing interpretation as well on things. People are getting literal, and that's the thing with art. It's not about sex. It's about expression as a human being. You can't help being born a man. You can't help being born a woman. So if you express it from your view in that way and your whatever gender and this and that, that's where the fluid thing is. It's humanity in that way.
Yeah.
And it can get so complex, and I think we've just got to simplify a few things. That let's look at things as like a human. No matter who's singing what, you can tweak the lyrics in your head, if you don't relate in that way.
Exactly.
And it's the same with artwork. It's that, all right, I'm thankful in that way that art is not a language of literal words in that way. It's that's the beauty. Anyone can relate. And for mental health, I hope that helps people like viewing the work and stuff. And it's quite hard because you're creating a still. You're not creating a Netflix series or film so that's why that's pretty hard. And right back to as well, I want to say about the old. So right back to the what I was on about as well. Like I've got to finish a body of work as in like a gallery, like a 20 images.
Yeah.
I am hyper-focused as a single image, but for some reason I like to work in a body of work.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of like, and that's where music inspires me. I love the idea of an album, but albums seem to have gone out now. Now people just stream singles, but I just love that collection of work and old-fashioned again, but I like the idea of vinyls, how they've come back, and I love the old collection of work because you could be creative and make an album in some way of a story.
Yeah. And
I think I'm old-fashioned in that way, but I just love that, that idea of creating a body of work. But as a single piece, I can create that. I've just got this thing where I've got to create a body of work, multiple like artworks rather than a single piece.
Yeah.
I'm open for like a single piece and stuff, but I just like more of a body, more of a collection, say things in multiple things rather than one, because I've too much to say in one piece, and I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
But at the same time, mental issues, ADHD, it's so hard to like finish it off.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle, and I've got to work on that, and you've got to do things your way on that, and take breaks if you need to. One thing I've learned as an artist that you've got to probably paint a few days and then rest a few days.
Yeah.
But you feel wrong with doing that because the world of work doesn't work like that. And you've got to, because you again, it's that burnout.
Yeah, and for me personally, with my autism, for example, I take things quite literal. And that's where I struggle with finding symbolism in artworks and creating symbolism in my own pieces. And that's where I think I'm basically a copy artist. I see a photo, I draw it, and then add my own things to it. Because I'm very literal with how I interpreted things. And that's perfectly fine. Everyone has their own strengths, and for me, that's that. But in a way, I do wish that I could see symbolism a bit better, because that would mean that artwork would be more impactful, if that makes sense.
So again, like in our last episode, we talked to differences with I'm traditional mainly, you're digital mainly.
Yeah.
And we're vice versa on both now. And so, same with that. Now I'm the other way again. I'm more symbolism, and there's nothing right or wrong with anything.
No.
But what you just said there, that you'll do your work in that way, and there's nothing wrong with that, because I also do that as well. So, I mean, you can say, look at a painting or a photo and use that as a reference, and you think that's literal, but it's not. It's your way of dealing with things.
Yeah.
But I do the same as well. It's just, obviously I do love plucking characters out of thin air and creating them things.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I listen to music, naturally I just get them visions and things, but you've also got to look at photos, multiple inspirations.
Definitely.
And as an artist, again, down to the mental health thing, it's whatever helps you feel right on that thing. So there's no right or wrong on that. And I just think that you've just got to follow what you want to do.
Yeah.
You can't... I think we're also worried about what's right, what's wrong, because I'm more symbolism, you say you're more literal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm also literal as well on things, and it's not all the time, I pluck things out of thin air and symbolism and things. I just enjoy it out of entertainment, you know what I mean? Like, as an artist, that nobody's ever going to know them symbols, and you expect that. But that's why you keep it private, because you expect people not to understand certain things, because how are they going to ever know what it was about?
Yeah.
It's just a nice little thing that you do that, like you watch, there's a lot of films out there that directors do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's certain symbols in films that nobody will ever know, unless you're a massive fan of that director or something that nobody ever knows.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's down to that mental health thing that it's that release for you.
Yeah.
And however it works for people, that's how you do it. There's no right or wrong.
No, definitely not. And what I also like about your art is that in your art I do find some symbolism more than I find in other people's art. And I think that's because I personally know you so well. But I love that because it opens my mind a lot more. And to come back to depression, for example, I've noticed personally when I'm in a depressive episode I cannot create. But when I start to feel a little bit better, you find inspiration again to create, to let your emotions out. And even though I draw portraits of people that exist, and they look exactly like the photo, well, not exactly, but more or less, because it's semi-realism, and I add things to it, it is a way of expressing what you feel. And it is a way of letting certain things out, because when you are feeling depressed, or just getting out of a bad depressive episode, you cannot automatically draw a person that is super happy. You draw something that's more drawn to you, that is a bit more somber, a bit more dark. And that's where, for example, I wouldn't draw I have no idea, some super happy pop star. No, I would draw a bit more of a gothic artist, musician, who makes darker songs, because that is more in tone with the mood that you're in. So in that way, that is still self-expression, and there's still some symbolism in there. But because I'm more of a copy artist that looks at a photo and then draws from reference, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. From reference, you learn a lot. I do tend to take things more literal, but that's my autism. Like when you speak to me and you use figurative speech, yeah, that goes above my head.
Yeah, so like you just said there about the whole, when you're in that dark place, that you said about these happy pictures, and that reminds me again with mental health, and that's something else I found with art, that you get questioned. It's like you're a weirdo when you paint these sad paintings.
Yeah.
And yet, isn't that what a lot of music is about? I mean, they're all about broken hearts.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like pop music, for example, is full of it. It's absolutely, it's called pop music because it's the biggest.
Popular.
It's full of the masses and stuff. And where you've got other directions, you've got like rap, hip hop, and it starts filtering off. But if you take pop music, it's known for broken heart music.
Yeah.
But goth music can be laughed at as if it's depressing. Well, really, and lyrically, you can't get more depressing than pop music because it's full of broken hearts and this and that. And so I found that it's acceptable in that way, but yet you paint a picture, and I've had it myself. Like, why don't you? Why is the girls that you paint why they're so sad? It's like, obviously that's not the market the audience that you creating the work for, and you get people that are going to get it, but I've never questioned that in my life on anybody. Like, if I see an artist and they've got, like, these sad portraits of girls and stuff, that there's beauty in that.
Definitely.
Again, I think people are just wired different, and some people just, they get it or they don't.
Yeah.
And sadly, it's just, the more people are wired the same way, they're not wired in that way. So it's the minority. But that's the beauty. You found your audience. People found beauty in what you do. And that's what matters. And it can bring you down when somebody says that, just by saying that. Why? And they advise you what you're doing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, why don't you start doing pretty pictures? Smiley faces. It's like, there's no relevance to that. No. It's just, I've got a gothic art style, and that's all that matters, and you find the people that relate. You express yourself, they relate.
Yeah.
And then people don't matter when they're not into that at all. They're not even into art or anything. But if they come across your artwork, they're the biggest critics of all. Yeah. Suddenly it's almost like they're experts. And they've no idea, because you're expressing it from that. And it's the same as like a songwriter doing a depressing song for whatever reason, or it's just your way of expressing. And my art's not about, like, love songs. I don't mean that, because for some reason music seems to be about love songs,
Yeah.
in that sort of way. But with art, it can be all sorts of mental health topics, whereas a lot of songs I found are not about mental health. It's always about a broken heart, which is, in a way, depressing, but that's normal. So I've always found that a bit strange, when it comes to art. Oh, why don't you make them smile?
Yeah.
It's like, well, it'd be a bit weird, actually, like, you've got the audience that you've got, and it doesn't make sense to me on that.
No, definitely not. And I remember this one time, like, I used to write a lot of poetry when I was in high school. And there was this one friend who I used to share it with, who I felt close enough with to share it with. And one day, out of the blue, she randomly said, you know what? I don't get it. Why don't write something happy? And I felt so invalidated, because back then I already had, like, severe struggles. I've been in therapy since I was, like, 4 years old. And last year I just came out of it, and I'm now 29, so that's 24 years I've been in therapy, almost consecutively. And I just felt so invalidated, and like, you don't get it. You don't get the form of self-expression. And the worst part for me personally was that she's an artist as well.
Yeah.
But she is the kind of artist who draws funny things. She makes people laugh with her art, and that's perfectly fine. That's her thing. But to me, I felt invalidated because she was pushing her views onto me, where I'm more of the darker artist, and that just feels wrong. Like, for example, I'm a vegetarian, but I'm not pushy about it. I don't let anyone, like, I won't change anyone's views. For example, you eat meat, and I'm fine with that. But if you want it, you have to cook it yourself. But I don't cook it, but I don't push it down your throat like, oh yeah, you have to be vegetarian. No, and that's the same with artwork. I'm more of a darker artist with more of a somber thing in it, and that really reflected in my poetry. And she was just like, yeah, write something happy. I want to read something happy from you. And I'm like, okay. But
then she's got a little niche that she's doing. Why is she spreading that word in that way? Like, you've got your own unique style, and why, like, in business, like, no, everyone wants to be unique.
Yeah.
So why is she doing that in that way? Whether you both sell or not, just forget that. I'm on about in style. Why is she wanting somebody to be like her in that way?
Exactly.
You appreciate each other's differences and stuff, and because you're totally different on that end, why is she inviting you into what she's doing? That's strange.
It is.
In that way, just accept that. Well, if she wants somebody to create more happy work, like what I've always said, create the art that you want to see. Exactly. Why don't she do that?
Yeah.
She's no need to say that to another artist. So she can create that work herself. Let everyone else do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And you want to create sad work, say.
Yeah.
You do what you do. You know, create the work that you want to see. And that's it as an artist. Create the work that you want to see. And you said again about poetry there, and again, similar to songwriting, poetry's darker in a way. It's not always about a broken art. It's more open on a lot of topics. And again, a lot of poetry is like sad. And I remember studying it at college, English literature. And personally, we was talking about all this, about, you know, the stuff I was doing with literature, and I love that because it was more creative. And again, that could be like a topic for another day, but what I loved about that, a lot of it was poetry, and I think that's why I gelled with that, because it was all the poetry that we were studying, it was depressive, but I loved it. But it didn't make you a depressed person in that way, you know. It's like I just loved it because it just did something.
Yeah.
And I was down at the time, but it is that release.
Definitely.
And if I go back now, and I'm really happy in my life now, but if I go back then, it'll be nostalgic. It'll do something for me, and I just appreciate that all sadness that you've got to, and that's the thing with art, you've got to get the sadness out. And in recent years, I've seen across the media that all of a sudden mental health is important. A few years ago, it was all, let's all be happy, let's all be this, let's all be that.
Exactly.
You know, and it was like, you're a weirdo if you're sad. And now it's becoming more mainstream to be open about your mental health, but for still some reason, I don't get it. In art, you've still got to be, why are you painting that?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Why? No, art's always been like that, yet now it's still getting criticised in them times where it's that.
Yeah.
And I think it all comes down to art decor, which people mix up with. That, you're supposed to have this nice pretty landscape on your wall. And it's not about that in that way. And you've got, I mean, people can buy prints and put it in a cupboard. You know, they don't have to put it on the wall.
Yeah.
And your art could look weird on the wall. You know, I get the whole thing that is art decor and stuff, but it's like buying a book of sad poetry and you're a fan of that art, that work that they do. It goes on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to pin it to your wall. And prints can be like that, you know. Buy the print, support the artist in that way, and it don't have to go on the wall, you know. It's just there's the support, and it's for you to look at, and it means something. It don't have to decorate your room. And you've got the art collectors and stuff different again. They buy this strange weird art, and they're not bothered because it's investment, it's this and that. But they're proud of that. A lot of art collectors buy a lot of weird artwork, and if it's not weird and it's not outrageous, they don't buy it, you know. But for some reason, it seems a lot of society is all about art decor, and they confuse that with art.
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be pretty pictures, you know. Well, buy a landscape for your wall. You know, this is different. It's a different audience, but there's some criticised. And as an artist, you sink sometimes. You've got to remember what you're doing it for.
Exactly. So, thank you so much for listening again. If you want to find us on socials, you got Art by Darkling on Instagram and on Ko-fi. And you got me on Instagram as Jupiter Darkling and as Mrs. Darkling on Ko-fi. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Hope to have you with us next time.